The first thing I heard after my stroke was my daughter's voice whispering to someone in the hallway. "Just make sure she understands there's nothing left," she said quietly. "The money is gone anyway." I kept my eyes closed. When you're 68 and wake up after a stroke, people assume two things: that you're fragile and that you're confused. That morning, I was neither. My name is Margaret Ellison, and 14 months before that moment, I was worth a little over $4 million. Not old family money, not lottery money. Real money. The kind built slowly through contracts, property, and 40 years of refusing to let men in gray suits tell me what I couldn't do. Yet there I was, lying in a rehabilitation bed that smelled faintly of antiseptic and boiled cabbage, listening to my own daughter explain to a nurse that I had no money left. The nurse asked gently, "Are you sure she understands?" "She will," my daughter replied. "Mom's not the same anymore. Not the same." I nearly smiled, because the truth was something they hadn't considered. A stroke scrambles many things: words, balance, memory. But it does not erase the instincts that built an empire. And even before I opened my eyes, something about their story already felt wrong. "Hello, my dear friends. It's Grace. I'm glad you're here today. Hearing your own children talk about you like you're already gone, that kind of coldness cuts deep. Tell me honestly, if you woke up to this, would you stay quiet or confront them immediately?" When I finally opened my eyes, the room was quiet. Morning light slid through pale curtains, turning everything a dull yellow. The metal railings, the plastic water pitcher, the tiny tray where someone had left a bowl of oatmeal, already forming a thin gray skin on top. My right arm felt heavy, my tongue even heavier. But my mind? Sharp. A nurse noticed I was awake and rushed over. She spoke slowly, the way people speak to toddlers and the elderly. "Good morning, Mrs. Ellison. Do you know where you are?" I looked at her, then at the ceiling, then back at her. "Rehabilitation," I croaked. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's right." She asked a few more questions. The year, the president, whether I could move my fingers. I answered most of them. Not perfectly, but well enough. After she left, the door opened again. My daughter Catherine walked in first, wearing a cream coat that probably cost more than my first car. Behind her came my son Daniel, tall, tense, checking his phone like the room bored him. For a moment, they simply looked at me. Catherine forced a soft smile. "Oh, Mom," she said gently, "you're awake." Her voice had the same tone she used when she was 10, and trying to explain why the neighbor's window had mysteriously shattered. Daniel stepped closer. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a truck," I rasped. That much at least was honest. Catherine squeezed my hand. "You scared us," she said. But her eyes moved quickly across the room. To the machines, the chart at the end of the bed, the hallway behind us, as if she were checking who might be listening. Then she said the sentence that still rings in my ears. "Mom, there are some things we need to talk about." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Catherine took a breath. "You were very sick for a long time. The stroke was severe. Doctors weren't sure you'd recover." I waited. "And during that time," she continued carefully, "your finances, well, things changed." There it was, the rehearsed speech. "What changed?" I asked slowly. Daniel answered this time. "The market collapsed on a few of your investments. Taxes piled up. Medical bills too. We tried to keep everything
And
afloat,
this
but
is kind of
he spread his
strange.
hands.
I like it
There's nothing
because,
left. Nothing left. $4.1 million.
it
Gone.
goes off at an
I
angle.
watched their faces. Daniel avoided eye contact. Catherine nodded
But it
sympathetically,
rolls.
like a bank
It
teller
makes a
denying a
colorful
loan. For a long moment, I said nothing,
noise.
because something small had already begun scratching at the back
And,
of my
you
mind.
know,
A memory, a
alright.
detail,
So,
something Daniel had just said. You see, when you spend decades managing money, your brain stores numbers the way musicians store
don't do
melodies.
that.
And Daniel had
We're gonna
just made
kind
one
of
mistake,
run
a
out of
tiny one,
excuses.
but big enough to tell me this
Now
story
this is
wasn't
a
simply bad luck.
gold in the dark
It was
and
a
the
lie. I looked at
rain,
my children, the two people I had worked my
rain.
entire life to protect, and realized something colder
Yeah.
than anger.
So
They thought the
yeah, and
stroke had
then you
finished me.
know
They thought I was too weak to question anything,
there's
too
a
slow
couple
to
of
remember,
whoops.
too broken to fight.
There's a couple
What
of
they didn't
mishaps.
understand yet was that Margaret
I
Ellison had
guess my
spent 40
signature.
years watching people try to outsmart her, and very few of them had
Okay,
succeeded.
here we go.
I closed my eyes again, pretending exhaustion. Let them think what they wanted. Because if my money was truly
We still
gone,
on? Okay.
then I needed to
Is
learn
this thing
exactly
on?
where it went. And the best way to catch a thief
Um,
is to let them believe you're still asleep.
tripod.
For the next 2 days, I played the role they expected.
Yeah, so this is
Slow
what
speech,
we're gonna
long
try and
pauses,
cut.
confusion
And
at convenient
also
moments.
this little
It wasn't entirely an act.
hydrastrate
A
pattern.
stroke is
You
not a
can get
polite
more or
visitor.
less,
My
depending
right
on how
leg
it
trembled when
suits
I
you
stood.
this
My
time
mouth
of
sometimes refused to form the word I wanted, and once I asked a nurse for water when I meant tea. But
Okay,
confusion about money?
okay.
That part I
We can
kept
do
perfectly
this.
hidden.
Out we
Catherine
go.
visited every morning
And
around 10,
running.
always dressed neatly, always
Here we
smelling
go.
faintly of
Yeah,
bergamot
so that's
perfume,
what we're gonna go out to
always
do
carrying the same concerned expression people wear at
is
funerals when they're trying not to check their
uh
watches. Daniel came less
have
often.
like these little
When he
pieces of
did,
oak
he
that we're
stayed near
just
the
gonna
window,
slice into
scrolling
little
through his phone
slices.
as if the world
And
inside that
then
screen
I had
mattered
some oak
more
that
than the
was
one standing in front of him.
just sitting out in the
On the
yard
third day, I
because
decided to test them.
I ran out of
I
places
remember the
inside,
house,
so
I
I
said
had to
slowly,
sit outside
sitting up in
with
bed
it.
while Catherine adjusted my pillow.
And so
The
sliced
one
it
by the
up into
lake.
little pieces
Her hands
and then
froze for half a
rotate
second.
it.
Then she
So
smiled.
hopefully it'll
We
like
had to sell it, Mom.
semi-match
Remember?
this.
After
I
the
think
stroke.
it's gonna have
Of
like
course. The
a
lake house.
weathered look.
I'd bought it 22 years earlier after a brutal merger negotiation in Chicago.
It'll
I still
use
remembered the smell of
neutral.
cedar from the
Yeah,
dock
it's
and the
natural.
ridiculous little copper kettle I used for making
And
lapsang
so,
souchong
okay,
on
got
cold
that.
mornings.
Uh,
Selling it would have been
cap on the cap.
inconvenient, but
Got
not
our
catastrophic.
apples. Good to go.
And the Boston apartment? I asked.
And
Daniel looked up from his phone.
so hopefully we
Gone
can
too,
get at
he said
least
flatly.
the
Catherine
top
nodded,
part,
squeezing my hand again.
some
We tried to
tours.
keep things stable as
Start
long
this
as possible.
being
I
a
tilted my
little bit
head,
lighter
as if
out.
thinking through fog. And the investment accounts?
And
Daniel
those.
exhaled loudly. Mom, the markets were a mess. Everything dropped. You had positions we couldn't maintain once the medical
Giant
bills started stacking
tripod
up.
and a cat.
Interesting.
Oh man.
Very interesting. Because the last time I
It
checked,
really rained
which
out.
was 3 days before my stroke, those accounts were structured specifically so they could survive a market crash. I had built them that way after the recession in 2008,
Inside the
which meant
garage,
one
but
of two
somehow
things had
that
happened.
doesn't
Either my entire
help
financial
much.
structure collapsed in the most spectacularly unlikely way imaginable,
And,
or my children were improvising.
here we go.
Catherine leaned closer. You shouldn't stress about this right now, she said softly.
So,
What matters
not
is that you're safe.
busted yet.
Safe. The word hung in the air like stale smoke. That afternoon, they brought in a speech therapist named Lena. She was younger than the others, maybe 35, with dark hair tied into a loose knot and the sharp, observant eyes of someone who noticed things before speaking. During our session, she placed picture
Made it.
cards on a small
I
table.
have to tell
Just say the word you
the
see,
jail.
she said
Where
gently.
did I leave my
Apple,
okay stuff?
chair,
So here's our
envelope.
wood.
My voice
Isn't that
cracked on the last one.
weird?
She nodded,
It's
writing
not too
something on her
bad.
clipboard.
I mean,
Then she
I
asked
had one
casually,
piece that was
"Do you
inside
feel
the
like your thoughts are
garage
clear?"
for a
I looked
while,
at her. "Clear enough,"
and
I said. Our eyes held for a moment longer than necessary.
gotta go
She understood something. Not
unplug the
everything,
light for the
but
little
enough.
boats.
Later that evening, as the hallway quieted and dinner trays clattered somewhere down the corridor, Lena returned with a cup of tea. "Chamomile," she said. I lifted an eyebrow. "Hospital, luxury." She smiled faintly. "Don't get used to it." She sat down beside the bed, pretending to review her notes. Then, very quietly, she asked something unexpected. "Mrs. Ellison, do you remember how long you were unconscious after the stroke?" "Days," I said. "Longer," she replied. "How long?" She hesitated. "Almost 14 months." The room went silent. 14 months. 14 months of my life erased. 14 months where other people made decisions for me.
We're so
I stared at the
rested.
window, watching rain slide down the glass in thin silver lines. 14 months was more than enough time for many things. A divorce, a bankruptcy, a business collapse, or a very careful theft. Lena cleared her throat. "There's something else you should know." My attention returned to her. "Your children told most of the staff that your cognitive recovery might be limited," she said carefully. I felt my stomach tighten. "They said it would be kinder if we didn't overwhelm you with complicated discussions." Complicated discussions. Like bank accounts, like legal guardianship, like $4 million disappearing into thin air. I looked down at my hands, still trembling slightly from the stroke, still weaker than they used to be, but capable,
So yeah,
capable enough.
this one was
"Lena,"
pretty
I said
okay.
quietly. "Yes?"
There's some
"If
like
someone wanted to see my medical
this looks
file?"
like
Her
seconds
eyes narrowed
of
slightly.
some
"That
guy
depends."
found
"On what?"
some and
"On
moved
whether
it.
they're supposed to."
Thank you for the
A
bit.
slow smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. For
See
the
that
first time since waking up, something inside me felt almost like excitement. Because if my children had truly spent $4.1 million in
This was
14
for
months,
Devin, thank you.
they hadn't just taken my money. They had rewritten my entire life. And rewriting a life requires paperwork. Lots of it. Paperwork leaves trails,
So
and trails
we've had this.
led somewhere. I leaned back against the
It was
pillow and closed my eyes again.
some
Let them think I was tired.
and
Let them think I was fragile. Let them keep talking in hallways. Because the more comfortable thieves become, the sloppier they get.
Thank you.
And sooner or later, someone always forgets to close a door.
Da, da.
The next morning, I began counting time differently. Not in hours,
And
in
so
mistakes.
I think
Because
if
when
this
people
was,
lie repeatedly, the lies
you can
start
kind of
stepping on
see
each
it
other's
looks like a
toes.
little bit rough cut,
Catherine arrived first again, right on schedule.
which is okay.
10 o'clock,
I mean,
same
I
coat,
put
same
that
careful smile. She brought a small paper bag from a cafe across the street. "I got you something nicer than hospital food," she said. Inside was a croissant and a small container of apricot jam. I stared at it for a moment,
Boy, good morning.
not because of the
Thank you
pastry,
for that.
because Catherine hated apricot jam. She used to complain the smell
And
reminded her of
another
cough
goodie.
syrup.
Thank you
Yet
for the
now she was bringing
subscription.
it to me like a thoughtful daughter. People performing kindness often forget the details of real memories. "Thank you," I said slowly.
I
She pulled a
can't.
chair
I
beside the
don't have
bed.
it
"Daniel
on
might
this
stop
one
by
here, but
later,"
I think
she added.
there might be a hype train. Thank you so
"He's been
much.
very busy managing
Uh,
everything." Everything. Such a
but yeah,
convenient word.
so anyways,
I took a bite of the croissant.
the oak there.
It was surprisingly good, flaky and warm, probably from that little French bakery 2 blocks from the hospital. Then I asked the question I'd been saving. Who's handling my accounts now? Catherine blinked. Your accounts? Yes. She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. Well, Daniel mostly, she said. And the attorney. Which attorney? Mr. Caldwell? I nearly laughed, because Harold Caldwell had been dead for 3 years. Instead, I frowned slightly, like someone struggling to recall something through fog. Caldwell? Yes. Catherine relaxed. You remember him? Vaguely, I said. She smiled again, satisfied. That was mistake number 1. She stayed another 15 minutes, talking about small things. The weather, the nurses, how proud she was of my progress. Then she kissed my cheek and left. The moment the door closed, I reached for the water on the bedside table and took a slow sip. Harold Caldwell, dead 3 years, meaning one of 2 things. Either Catherine had no idea who was handling my legal affairs, or she assumed I didn't remember. Around noon, Daniel finally appeared. Unlike his sister, he didn't bother pretending enthusiasm. You look better, he said, leaning against the wall. Feel better, I replied. He nodded once. Silence settled between us. Daniel had always been the quieter of my children. As a boy, he dismantled radios and computers just to see how they worked. As a teenager, he hacked the school network out of boredom. And as an adult, well, adults simply use their talents in more expensive ways. You're making the nurses nervous, he said suddenly. How? You're recovering faster than they expected. There it was. A flicker of honesty. I tilted my head. Is that bad? Daniel studied me carefully. For a moment, I saw the same calculating expression he used during college chess tournaments. No, he said slowly. It's just surprising. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I caught a glimpse of the screen. A notification banner. From Aston Martin, Stockholm. My eyes moved away before he noticed. But inside my chest, something tightened. Aston Martin. Not exactly the kind of dealership someone visits after losing millions in family finances. Daniel slid the phone back into his pocket. I should go, he said. Before leaving, he added something else. Don't worry about the money, Mom. What matters is that you're taken care of. Taken care of? I nodded politely. After he left, the room felt strangely quiet. Rain had stopped outside and sunlight spilled across the floor in long, pale strips. 14 months. 14 months while I lay somewhere between living and dying. Long enough for my children to sell houses. Long enough to move money. Long enough to tell the world a story about their poor, declining mother. But something about Daniel's face kept bothering me. Not guilt, not fear, confidence. The kind of confidence people only have when they believe the system is already on their side. Later that afternoon, Lena returned for another therapy session. We practiced reading sentences. My speech was improving, slowly. When the exercises ended, she gathered the cards and leaned closer. Your recovery is progressing unusually fast, she said quietly. I've always been stubborn. She smiled slightly. Then her voice dropped. I checked something for you. My attention sharpened. Your children filed an emergency guardianship petition 6 weeks after your stroke. Guardianship. That meant control, medical decisions, financial authority, everything. Approved? I asked. Yes. My throat tightened. Based on what? Lena hesitated. According to the file, your neurologist testified that you were unlikely to regain meaningful cognitive function. meaningful.
Does that work?
I looked at my hands again, then at the window,
Set that down.
then back at
I
her.
think I need to let go.
That neurologist, I said slowly. Do you know his name? She nodded. Dr. Marcus Lindgren.
You guys, I got
The name hit me like a cold draft through an open door. Because I knew Dr. Lindgren, not personally, but professionally. 5 years earlier, one of my companies had donated nearly $500,000 to the Neurological Research Foundation he chaired, which meant something else entirely. Dr. Lindgren knew exactly who I was, and if he testified, I would never recover. Then someone had convinced him, or someone had paid him, or someone had lied to him very, very well. I leaned back against the pillow, my mind turning faster now. The pieces were beginning to move. Children with legal control. A doctor declaring me mentally gone. $4 million disappearing in 14 months. And a son receiving notifications from luxury car dealerships. I exhaled slowly, because one thought had just settled firmly into place. This wasn't a messy accident. It was a plan. And plans have architects. The first time I left the rehabilitation room, I nearly collapsed after 12 steps. A stroke teaches you humility in brutal ways. My right leg dragged slightly, and the corridor seemed much longer than it had when I arrived in a wheelchair. Every few steps, my balance wavered, and Lena hovered nearby, pretending she was only observing progress. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and something sweet from the kitchen, maybe cinnamon porridge. I gripped the metal railing. Slow, Lena said quietly. I am slow. We reached a small sitting area near a window. Someone had placed a dusty ficus plant beside 2 faded armchairs and a little table stacked with old magazines. On the table sat a bowl of wrapped caramels. I lowered myself into one of the chairs. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Lena said, "You've been thinking a lot." I let out a quiet breath. Yes. She looked around the hallway to make sure no one was listening. There's something else in your file you should probably know. I waited. The guardianship request didn't just include the neurologist's testimony. My fingers tightened around the armrest. What else? Financial urgency, she said. Meaning, your children claimed your accounts were collapsing, and that immediate control was necessary to prevent catastrophic losses. Catastrophic losses. $4 million apparently evaporating in 14 months certainly sounded catastrophic. But here's the strange part, Lena added. I looked at her. The documentation supporting that claim was thin. How thin? One letter from a financial advisor and a brief statement from your son. Daniel. Of course. I stared out the window. The sky had cleared and pale sunlight bounced off the wet pavement outside. A delivery van rolled past the entrance, and a nurse laughed somewhere down the hall. Normal sounds. Normal life. Meanwhile, my entire existence had apparently been rewritten on the strength of 2 documents. You said something yesterday, Lena continued carefully, about remembering your finances. I do. Then I need to ask you something directly. She leaned closer. Did you ever give Daniel authority over your accounts before the stroke? No. The answer came instantly. Because that decision had always been simple. Daniel was brilliant with technology, but reckless with money. When he was 26, he spent nearly $80,000 trying to build a cryptocurrency startup with 3 friends and a Labrador retriever that apparently served as their office mascot. I loved my son, but I trusted him with family dinners, not with $4 million. Lena nodded slowly. That's what I suspected. Before I could respond, Footsteps echoed down the corridor. We both looked up.
Okay.
A man in a dark suit was walking toward the nurses' station at the far end of the hall.
We got museum.
Tall,
That
silver
was really
hair,
hard.
polished
Okay.
shoes, the quiet confidence of someone used to expensive rooms.
Okay.
He spoke briefly
I
with one of the
know.
nurses.
Flunky.
Then he glanced down the hallway.
Flunky.
Our eyes met. For a split second, recognition flickered across his face. Then he turned away.
2 left.
"Who is that?" I asked quietly.
No.
Lena
Flunky.
followed my gaze. "Oh,"
Yeah.
she said. "That's Mr. Halberg. He's been here a few times."
Hard one.
"Why?" "He handles financial
Alright.
matters for some of the residents."
That one for
Financial
summer.
matters.
Go, 'cause summer go.
I watched him speak to the nurse again.
Alright,
Something about his posture
Okay.
felt
you
familiar.
guys.
Then it hit me. "Halberg," I
You
murmured.
guys. Thorny.
The name slid through my memory like a key in a lock. Jonas Halberg,
Yeah, I
private
know.
wealth manager,
You're just
extremely
trying to,
discreet,
like, own
extremely
all of it
expensive,
because
and most importantly,
goat,
not someone Daniel could afford. Not even
but
close.
You know,
"Lena," I said
you're
quietly.
supposed to go over
"Yes?
in the feeder and not
"Did
on
he
the
ever visit me
floor.
before?" She frowned
Jumper,
slightly. "I'm not
you're
sure.
not even over here.
I'd have to check the visitor log."
What are you doing?
"Please do." She nodded. A few minutes later, she returned with a tablet used for staff records. Her fingers scrolled down the screen, then stopped. Her eyebrows lifted. "Well,"
Alright,
she said softly.
sir.
"What?" "He visited you 3
I'm
times
pretty
during the
sure you
first
guys
6
will
months
have
after your
made a
stroke."
mess of this.
My pulse quickened. 3 visits. While I was unconscious.
Yeah.
"Who signed him in?" I asked. Lena scanned the screen again. Then she turned the tablet slightly so I could see. Visitor authorization, Daniel Ellison. Of course. But that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was the purpose of visit. The screen read, "Financial transfer coordination." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Lena asked, "Does that mean anything to you?" Oh, it meant something. It meant Daniel hadn't been guessing. He hadn't been improvising. He'd brought in one of the most meticulous wealth managers in Scandinavia, while I lay unconscious. Which meant the money hadn't simply disappeared into luxury cars and designer kitchens. It had been moved, carefully, professionally, possibly even legally. And that realization changed the shape of everything. Because stealing money is messy. But relocating money, that takes planning, precision, and someone who knows exactly how the system works. I leaned back slowly in the chair. My children hadn't just looted my life. They had restructured it. And if Jonas Halberg was involved, then somewhere out there, my $4 million might still exist. Just not where it used to be. All right, friends. Things just got interesting. This doesn't look like simple greed anymore. If someone hires a wealth manager while their mother is unconscious, that's planning on a different level. Tell me honestly, what would you be thinking right now if you were Margaret? That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of pain, though my shoulder still throbbed when I moved, but because my mind refused to slow down. Jonas Halberg. The name circled my thoughts like a hawk. In my world, people like Halberg did not appear casually. They were the financial equivalent of surgeons. Expensive, precise, and usually called only when something complicated needed to be handled quietly. Daniel couldn't afford him. Which meant one of 2 things had happened. Either Halberg believed he was acting on my authority, or someone had convinced him that Daniel already controlled my assets. Neither possibility was comforting. At 2 in the morning, the rehabilitation wing was nearly silent. Somewhere down the corridor, a machine beeped steadily, and a nurse's footsteps echoed every few minutes like a slow metronome. I sat up carefully, in bed. The room was dim, except for the small lamp beside the window.
I
Outside,
thought,
the city looked
oh,
washed
well,
clean after the rain, the
you know,
streetlights reflecting off wet asphalt like
I
scattered
just
gold.
kind of like gotten
14
everything
months.
out of
14 months
losing
while my
track and all
children
that
moved
sort of
pieces
stuff.
across the board. I
And
needed
I
information. And
figured I
information
needed
required
to,
two
like,
things:
go to the
records
grocery
and people.
store,
The next
that
morning, Lena
sort of
returned
thing,
earlier than usual.
the
You look like you haven't
inevitable.
slept, she said.
And it
Thinking,
was
I
raining,
replied.
and I thought,
She
like,
pulled a chair beside the bed.
oh,
I checked
well,
the
I don't
visitor
want to
logs
go
again,
grocery
she said
shopping in the
quietly.
rain.
And? Jonas
That's
Halberg didn't just visit.
silly.
My
Who does
stomach
that?
tightened. What do
I'll
you
just
mean?
wait for it to quit raining
He
and
had
then I'll
private
go.
meetings with your son in one of the administrative offices. How many? 5. 5 meetings. That was not casual
You
financial
must
advice.
say I
That was
went,
a
and
project.
then I got
Did the staff know what
over
they were
the fact
discussing?
that
I
it
asked.
rains like
Lena shook her head. They
all the
always
time.
listed the same purpose in the
Yeah.
system: financial coordination,
Okay,
of
so I've got my
course,
list.
carefully vague.
Got my cut list there.
Lena,
Kinda
I said slowly, have you ever seen my
loosen
children
this
arguing?
here a
She
second.
frowned.
And we'll at least get
Once,
the oak
a few weeks
part
ago.
dealt with
My attention sharpened.
and
About what? I wasn't
see
close enough
how
to hear
that
everything,
fits.
she admitted, but your daughter sounded upset. Something
And
about Daniel moving things too fast. Moving
still
things.
waiting. Yeah, I
My
know,
fingers
after a
tapped
while,
lightly
it's like,
against the blanket. So Catherine might not know everything.
yeah,
Maybe. That possibility lingered in the air. Because if Catherine
I
didn't know
just
everything,
like,
then Daniel might have been running the real
okay, I
operation alone,
suddenly had that
or
moment
worse.
of, this
Catherine
is
knew exactly what
Oregon,
happened, but wanted to pretend
this is
otherwise.
not California.
Both scenarios were useful, just
This
in
is
different
like,
ways.
things are gonna be
Later that
like all
afternoon, Daniel
different.
returned. This time he looked slightly more
It's
tense.
not gonna be like
Physical therapy going well?
whatever
He
it
asked.
was I was
Slow,
thinking.
I
It's
said.
like gonna be
He
different
nodded.
now.
Then
I
he walked to the
mean,
window and stared
I
outside
was
for a moment.
attracted because
Doctors say you're
I
improving faster than
had
expected.
a Victorian
Yes.
house with 180
Silence
degree
stretched
wide
between us.
water view that
I watched him
had,
carefully.
3 digits less
Daniel had
than
always been
San
difficult to read.
Francisco, and I
Even
thought,
as a boy, he kept his emotions folded
well, this
neatly
is,
inside
how
himself,
bad can
like
it
letters
be?
no one else was allowed to open.
Well, you have to
Finally,
go
I
grocery
spoke.
shopping in
Daniel?
the
He turned.
rain.
Yes? Do you remember the copper kettle? He blinked. What kettle? The one at
Big
the lake
deal.
house. The little one I used for tea.
Big deal.
Oh, he said quickly. Right. What happened to it? He shrugged.
Um,
Probably sold with the house.
but
I nodded
it's
slowly.
it's
That was mistake
it's
number
that
2.
same thing. It's
Because
like,
the kettle had never
well,
been at the
wherever
lake
you're
house.
gonna,
It was in the Boston
I'm gonna
apartment.
measure it, 'cause I
Daniel
want it to
didn't
be
notice the
like
trap he'd stepped into.
squares, and so
Instead, he pulled his
there's
phone
my
from his pocket again.
thickness.
A message flashed briefly across the screen. I caught just enough to read the sender. Halberg Private Wealth. Daniel locked the phone instantly, but it was too late. I had seen it. He slipped the phone back into his jacket. I have a meeting, he said. I'll visit later this week. Then he left. The door closed quietly behind him. I leaned back against the pillow. Halberg was still in contact, meaning whatever they'd done with my money, it wasn't finished yet. That evening, Lena returned with my therapy schedule for the next week. But instead of placing it on the table, she sat down beside the bed again. You're planning something, she said. I smiled faintly, thinking. She studied me for a moment. Then she said something that surprised me. My brother works in banking. My eyebrows lifted. Does he? Yes. Compliance division. Compliance. The people who investigate suspicious financial activity. He owes me a favor, she added. The room went very quiet. I looked at her carefully. You'd risk your job for this? She shook her head. I wouldn't risk my job. Then she smiled slightly. but asking a hypothetical question about a large financial transfer isn't against any rules. For the first time
It's
since
like you
waking up
gotta
from the
know a
stroke, I
guy
felt
to get
something close
parts
to
like
genuine
this, and
warmth,
then it's like, you
because
shake
allies rarely arrive with
hands like
trumpets.
parts like this.
Usually they appear quietly,
Okay,
like a speech therapist bringing chamomile tea.
wow, it's coming down.
Lena, I said softly. Yes? If $4 million moved through the system in 14 months? She nodded slowly. There will be traces, she finished. Exactly. Traces. And if there were traces, then somewhere inside the quiet machinery of banks and accounts and digital records, the truth was waiting. The only question
Oh
now was
yeah,
how ugly it
I
would
don't
be
know
when
if
I
you guys
finally
saw.
found it.
You got.
2 days
I felt
later,
so
I
bad
finally
because
stepped
they were
outside the
planning to do
rehabilitation
the
wing.
boats,
Not outside the building, I
refreshment
wasn't strong
boats
enough
and
for
get,
that yet,
cat
but into the
litter,
main lobby of the
dust
facility.
badges up
Lena
there.
insisted it was
Because
good
you guys
for
have been
environmental
awesome for
stimulation,
like
which sounded like a polite way of
a
saying the world
while
still
now, and
exists beyond your
like,
hallway. The lobby was
so
brighter than the ward
I
upstairs.
did get a new emote up there.
Tall
Woo!
windows, pale wooden floors, a faint smell of coffee
That was
drifting from a small
fun.
cafe corner where visitors
I
sat,
want to like
whispering over
fix it.
porcelain cups.
It's
Real
okay.
cups,
It's
not
okay.
plastic.
And then,
That alone told me this place charged a great deal of money for the illusion of comfort.
oh yeah, and then,
I moved
when
slowly with my
you
cane,
move,
each step deliberate.
there's always going
The
to be
stroke still
something.
pulled slightly at my
It's
right
always
side, like
something.
gravity had
And like
decided to
Santa
favor one
Bama
direction.
says, it's
Lena
always
walked beside
something,
me, but kept a
like
respectful
landslides
distance.
and
You're doing better,
rain,
she said.
too much
I'm
rain.
doing careful.
California, not
We
enough
reached a small
rain.
seating area near the window. Outside,
Or
a
it's
thin
too
layer
much
of
rain,
snow
but
had
one
begun
point
settling across the street.
landslides.
Stockholm in early winter
Some everything.
always had that strange, quiet brightness.
Okay,
The
here we
sky
go.
pale,
Loud
the air
noises.
sharp enough to wake every nerve. I lowered myself into a chair.
What happened?
Then I saw her. A young woman sitting at the cafe
Uh-oh.
table across the lobby, staring at me
We
like she'd
finally
just seen a
arrived at
ghost.
the
It
end.
took a second for recognition to
Oh
land.
no. Let's
Clara?
turn this
I
off.
said.
Alright, uh-oh.
She stood so quickly, her chair
I was
scraped
running
across the
this
floor.
yesterday.
Grandma?
That's
My
all.
granddaughter crossed the room in 3 hurried steps and wrapped her arms around me
Come
before
on.
Lena could even react. Her coat smelled faintly of cold air and
I've
vanilla
got this
shampoo.
thing since
Grandma, they told me you weren't really
95,
awake yet. My eyes moved past her shoulder,
94.
across the lobby, where Catherine stood frozen beside the reception desk. Ah, so this visit hadn't been planned. Clara pulled back slightly, studying my face. You look different, she said
Okay.
softly.
Obviously,
I had a stroke.
it was not
I
meant
know,
to be.
she whispered.
Did I
But Mom
really
said you
get
barely
it?
recognized people. I glanced toward Catherine again.
Cord,
My daughter quickly forced a smile and walked over.
switch cords.
Clara, sweetheart, I was just about to explain.
'Cause this cord was
You said she couldn't talk
straight away.
properly, Clara interrupted. Catherine's smile tightened. She's improving. Clara looked back at me, confusion written all over her face.
Well,
You sound fine.
we do something else.
Mostly. Lena quietly stepped away, pretending to check something at the nurse's station. Smart woman. Family moments can become complicated quickly.
What happened?
Clara sat down beside me. Her eyes were still the same shade of gray they'd been when she was a child sitting at my kitchen counter eating honey cakes straight from the oven. How long have you been awake? She asked. A few days. Her head turned slowly toward Catherine.
Yeah,
A few days? Catherine cleared her throat.
that's all.
We didn't want to overwhelm her. That phrase again.
I read
Overwhelm.
it yesterday.
Clara didn't look convinced. Then she leaned closer to me. Grandma, something weird has been going on.
Like,
My attention sharpened. What do you mean?
maybe
She
there's
hesitated,
like a
glancing at Catherine.
fuse that I don't
My daughter was suddenly very interested in adjusting the strap of her handbag.
breaker.
Clara lowered her voice. Mom and Uncle Daniel have been
Ford was just
different.
running the goat light.
How? They fight all the time, she said quietly. Mostly about money.
Problem.
Catherine looked up sharply.
This spins
Clara,
freely.
this is not the place. But Clara kept speaking. And Uncle Daniel bought a new car last month.
Oh man.
My pulse slowed. What kind of car?
Well,
Clara frowned slightly, thinking.
heck,
British, I think. Dark green. The logo looked like wings. Aston Martin. Daniel hadn't even waited until I woke up. Catherine stepped forward quickly. That was a business purchase, she said.
it's a rat.
Clara stared at her. Mom? He's not even in the car business. Silence dropped across the lobby.
Really rough.
I studied my daughter carefully.
He is just
Her jaw was tight now.
all
The pleasant daughter mask had slipped slightly. Clara, Catherine said quietly, why don't you get us some coffee? Clara didn't move. Grandma should know the truth. Clara. Her voice sharpened, but my granddaughter held her ground. What truth? I asked calmly. Catherine inhaled slowly. Then she sat down across from me. For the first time since my stroke, her expression wasn't rehearsed. It was irritated. Telling her half stories isn't helping anyone, she said to Clara. Then she turned back to me. Mom, Daniel handled the financial side after your stroke. I didn't control everything. Interesting. A careful choice of words. Not, I didn't know. Just I didn't control it. And? I asked. And things got complicated, she said. How complicated? Catherine hesitated. Then Clara said the words that changed the temperature of the room. Grandma, Daniel invested a lot of the money. My eyes moved to her. Invested where? Clara swallowed. In some kind of biotech company. Biotech. That was not what I expected. And it's not going well, she added quietly. The lobby felt suddenly colder, because if Daniel had taken millions of dollars and pushed them into a desperate investment, then this wasn't just greed. This was something much more dangerous. I looked from Clara to Catherine. Neither of them spoke. Finally, I asked the question that had been waiting since the beginning. How much did he invest? Clara answered. Almost all of it. $4.1 million, gone into a single bet. I leaned back slowly in the chair. The story had just shifted again. Because theft is one thing. But gambling someone else's fortune on a collapsing biotech company? That kind of mistake destroys lives. And if Daniel had really done that, then somewhere out there was a company sitting on the other end of my stolen money, which meant the trail had just become much easier to follow. That night, I asked Lena to bring me my therapy schedule again, not because I cared about the exercises, but because I needed something to write on. She understood immediately. Good nurses and good allies learn to recognize quiet signals. She left the clipboard on my bedside table without asking questions. When the hallway finally went quiet, I turned on the small lamp and began writing 3 names. Daniel, Jonas Hallberg, biotech company. Then I drew a line between them. For 40 years, my work had revolved around risk. Contracts, acquisitions, property development. All of it came down to the same basic principle. Follow the money. Money always tells the truth eventually. The next morning, Lena arrived carrying 2 cups of tea instead of 1. That's either good news, I said, or very bad news. She closed the door quietly. My brother answered my question. I gestured for her to continue. He checked something in the banking system, she said carefully. Not officially, just curiosity. Of course. He found a transfer. My pulse slowed. How large? 2 million. That was already enough to make most people nervous, but not enough to explain everything. Where did it go? I asked. To a venture capital fund. I waited, focused on biotech startups. There it was. Daniel hadn't invested directly. He had moved the money through a fund, which meant two things. First, someone professional helped structure the investment. Second, the paper trail was likely layered. That fund, I said slowly. Does it have a name? Lena nodded. Nordvera Capital. The name rolled through my memory. Nordvera. I had heard it before, not recently, years ago. Then the memory clicked into place. Nordvera specialized in high-risk medical technology companies, experimental treatments, gene therapies, neurological research, the kind of investments that could multiply tenfold or disappear overnight. How much total? I asked. Lena hesitated. From what my brother could see, roughly 3.8 million moved through accounts connected to that fund. 3.8. So Clara had been right. Almost everything. And the rest? I asked. Luxury purchases, Lena said. I exhaled slowly. How many? A few large ones. She glanced at her notes. Vehicle purchases, travel expenses, jewelry. Of course, even gamblers reward themselves before the game ends. But something about the biotech angle still bothered me. Because Daniel wasn't stupid. Reckless, yes, but not stupid. You said Nordvera focuses on neurological research, I said. Yes. And my stroke was neurological, Lena finished. The room went quiet. Because suddenly, Daniel's decision looked less random. If he had invested in a company researching stroke treatments or brain recovery, then he might have believed he was making a brilliant move. Fix the family fortune. Save the day. Maybe even cure his mother along the way. But there was another possibility. A darker one. What company inside the fund received the investment? I asked. Lena shook her head. My brother couldn't see that level of detail. That was disappointing, but not fatal. Because venture funds always had investors. And investors always demanded updates. Somewhere out there, Daniel was receiving reports about the company currently holding my fortune, which meant sooner or later, he would need to talk about it. Later that afternoon, Clara returned. This time without Catherine. She slipped into the room quietly and closed the door behind her. I shouldn't stay long, she said. Mom thinks this is stressful for you. I've survived worse. She sat down beside the bed. Her hands were shaking slightly. Grandma, Uncle Daniel's investment isn't just any biotech company. My attention sharpened. What do you mean? Clara leaned closer. I heard Mom yelling about it last week. And? She said if the clinical trials fail, the whole company collapses. Clinical trials. That meant the company was already deep into development, which meant large amounts of money had already been spent. How soon will the trial results come out? I asked. Clara swallowed. Tomorrow. The word hung in the air. Tomorrow. Meaning Daniel's $4 million gamble was about to either explode into profit or vanish forever. I leaned back slowly against the pillow. For the first time since waking up from the stroke, I felt something unexpected. Not anger. Not fear. Anticipation. Because if Daniel's bet failed, then the money would be gone. But if it succeeded, then my children might be sitting on something far larger than $4 million. And suddenly, their behavior over the past 14 months started making a different kind of sense. I looked at Clara. Does your uncle know the results come out tomorrow? She nodded. Yes. I closed my eyes for a moment. because somewhere out there, Daniel Ellison was waiting for news that could either destroy him or make him unimaginably rich. And if he was about to become rich using my money, then our next conversation was going to be very interesting.
Okay, we're
The
back
results
to
of
square
Daniel's
one
gamble
again.
were announced
Okay,
the next morning.
I'm voting for
I didn't hear it
one.
from him. Of course not. I heard it from Clara. She burst
That's
into my
the
room
part.
just after 9, breathless from rushing through the corridors. Her cheeks were red from the cold outside, and she hadn't even taken off her coat. "Grandma," she said, closing the door behind her, "something just happened." I was sitting in the chair beside the window, slowly working my fingers around the handle of a porcelain teacup. Lena had insisted I practice fine motor control every morning. "What happened?" I asked. Clara lowered her voice. "The trial results came out." My grip tightened slightly on the cup. "And?" She stared at me. "Uncle Daniel's company. It worked." For a moment, I said nothing. Outside the window, thin snow continued drifting through the gray morning air. Worked. That single word meant a great deal in the world of biotech. If a clinical trial succeeded, especially a neurological one, investors didn't just make money, they made fortunes. "How well did it work?" I asked calmly. Clara shook her head slowly, still trying to process it. "The stock price exploded this morning. Mom was screaming at Daniel on the phone. Something about the company being worth billions now. Billions.
Something else. Okay,
My
hold
$4 million
forward.
suddenly felt like a very
The
small
other
seed.
one.
"Did Daniel sell his
I
shares?"
don't
I
know. It
asked.
was
"I
like
don't know." Clara hesitated. But Mom said something else. "What?" "She said Daniel might have made over $40 million.
here we
The
go.
room went completely silent. 40 million. My children had told me I had nothing left. Meanwhile, one of them might now be sitting on 10 times my original fortune, using my money. Clara sank into the chair across from me. "I don't understand why they
No,
didn't just
okay.
tell you," she said
No,
quietly. Oh, I
that
understood.
switch is off.
Perfectly. Because if Daniel suddenly admitted the investment had succeeded, then a very uncomfortable
Well,
question would immediately appear. Whose money had funded it? Mine. And if the courts looked closely at that
okay.
guardianship
I think
arrangement,
it's that.
well,
All right.
things could become very unpleasant for him.
Plan B.
Just then, my phone vibrated softly on the bedside table. The facility had
Plug
issued
it
it to me
in.
2 days earlier for family communication. The screen lit up.
Leave
"Unknown
quiet.
number," I answered.
Quiet.
"Margaret Ellison speaking." There was a pause on the other end. Then a calm male voice said, "Mrs. Ellison, this is Jonas Halberg." "Ah, right on schedule." "Good morning, Mr. Halberg." "I understand you've regained consciousness," he said carefully. "Yes." Another pause. "I believe we need to discuss several financial matters." "I believe we do." His voice lowered slightly. "Your son made certain strategic decisions during your medical incapacity." Strategic. Such an elegant word for gambling someone else's fortune. "I'm aware," I said. "I also understand the investment performed well this morning." That caught
Well,
him off
I
guard.
think it's probably
Silence.
that.
Then he said quietly, "Yes, very well."
And
"How well?"
plug in the go
Another
light in a
pause.
minute.
Then he answered, "The
See
current
if that
valuation of your son's holdings is approximately $42 million.
dollars.
42.
Hopefully it
I
didn't
leaned
sort
back
this
slowly in the
out.
chair because the situation had
But
just become much more complicated.
that cord's working
Daniel
right
hadn't destroyed my
there.
fortune. He had multiplied it 10 times over, which meant the legal
Side.
battle ahead wasn't about recovering
Take
$4
this
million
pin
anymore.
away.
It was about something
Put this
far
second on
larger,
top.
and people behave very differently when
Put the
tens of millions
infuser
are
out.
involved.
What we came
"Mr.
here
Halberg?"
to
I said
do.
calmly. "Yes? Tell me something."
Yeah, this
"Of course."
is
Did my son ever inform you that the capital he invested belonged to me?
I don't
The
know.
line went very quiet. When Halberg spoke again, his tone had changed. No, he said carefully. He did not. Interesting. Very interesting. Because that meant Daniel had misrepresented something important. Possibly something criminal.
We'll test it.
Then I suspect, I said quietly, that you and I will be speaking much more frequently in the near future.
Will the same
I believe you are correct.
cord in the old
After the call ended, Clara stared at me. What was that about? I set the phone down slowly.
see if the
Your uncle's investment. And
I
he made a great deal of money this morning. Her eyes widened. How much? $42 million. Clara nearly dropped her cup. 42? Yes. For a moment, she looked almost excited. Then the realization hit her. Wait, but that money was yours. Exactly. I stood slowly, leaning on my cane. The stroke still pulled at my right side, but my balance was improving. Step by step, just like everything else. Because now the real question wasn't whether Daniel had stolen my fortune. The real question was far more interesting. What happens when someone steals $4 million from their mother and accidentally turns it into 42 million? All right. I need to pause here for a second. Imagine waking up from a stroke, being told you're broke, and then discovering the money secretly turned into 40 million. Would you demand it back immediately? Or would you wait and see what your children do next? I'm really curious what you'd do. The strange thing about $42 million is that it changes the air in the room, even if the money isn't physically there. You can feel it, like a storm forming somewhere beyond the horizon. Clara was still staring at me as if the number itself might explode. 42 million, she whispered again. Yes. But Uncle Daniel told everyone the investments failed. That's because, I said calmly, the truth would be inconvenient. She frowned. For who? For him. I walked slowly back toward the bed and sat down carefully. My legs still trembled after too many steps, but the strength was returning day by day. $42 million. Daniel had turned my fortune into something far larger than he ever expected. But that didn't mean he intended to share it. In fact, it meant the opposite. People lie much harder when the prize becomes enormous. Clara leaned forward. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. Her eyebrows lifted. Nothing? Not yet. Because rushing into a confrontation would be the one mistake Daniel was probably hoping for. If I stormed into the situation now, he could panic, move money, hide assets, restructure accounts. $42 million could disappear into legal smoke very quickly. No, patience had always been my best weapon. Grandma, Clara said carefully, there's something else. Go on. Mom doesn't know the full amount. I looked at her. What does she think? 20 million, maybe 25. Interesting. Daniel had even hidden the real profit from his own sister, which meant the situation inside the family was already unstable. Have they been arguing again? I asked. Clara nodded. Almost every night. About the company? About control, she said quietly. Control? Of course, because whoever controlled the shares controlled the money. Does Daniel own the shares directly? I asked. Clara shook her head. I don't think so. Mom said something about a holding company. A holding company. That explained Halberg's involvement. When you want to move millions quietly, you rarely hold them in your own name. You build structures, layers, shadows behind shadows. But even shadows leave footprints. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Jonas Hallberg. I opened it. A single sentence appeared on the screen. We should meet privately. Your son is not aware I contacted you. I showed the message to Clara. Her eyes widened. Is that good? It might be very good. Why? Because Mr. Hallberg is protecting himself. And when financial professionals start protecting themselves, it usually means one thing. They've realized something about the situation could become dangerous. Clara tilted her head. Dangerous how? Legally. She swallowed. You think Uncle Daniel broke the law? I think, I said calmly, your uncle told several people a story that might not survive close inspection. Clara sat back slowly. But if the investment worked, wouldn't everyone just celebrate? I smiled faintly. Oh no, Clara. That's not how money works. Success doesn't erase the origin of the funds. If someone steals $4 million and turns it into 42, the law still calls it theft. And theft becomes much more interesting when multiplied by 10. Clara looked down at her hands. So, what happens next? I leaned back against the pillow and closed my eyes for a moment. In my mind, the board was becoming clearer. Daniel had the money. Catherine had suspicion. Hallberg had knowledge. And I had patience. When I opened my eyes again, I said quietly, next, we let your uncle believe he's safe. Clara blinked. Why? Because people who believe they're safe. I picked up the teacup and took a slow sip. Make very expensive mistakes. Just then, the door opened. Catherine walked in. Her expression immediately shifted when she saw Clara sitting beside me. Oh, she said. I didn't realize you were here. Clara stood quickly. I was just leaving. Catherine watched her go, the tension between them almost visible in the air. Then she turned back to me. For the first time since my stroke, she didn't bother pretending warmth. Daniel told me you've been asking questions, she said. Yes. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You should be careful, Mom. Careful? You don't fully understand the situation. I met her gaze calmly. Then perhaps you should explain it. For a moment, Catherine hesitated. Then she said something that surprised me. You're not the only one Daniel lied to. That was new. What do you mean? I asked. Catherine crossed her arms. When you were unconscious, he convinced me the investment was small. How small? 500,000. 500,000. Daniel had lied to everyone, even his own sister. I only discovered the truth last week, she continued quietly. And what did you do? I confronted him. And? Catherine laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. He told me something very interesting. I waited. He said the money wasn't really yours anymore. My pulse slowed. What does that mean? Her eyes met mine. It means, she said carefully, Daniel believes he legally owns everything now. The room went very quiet, because if Daniel truly believed that, then he wasn't just hiding the money, he was preparing to keep it. And that meant the family conflict was about to become far more dangerous than simple greed. When Catherine left that afternoon, the room felt strangely heavier, not because of what she said, because of how she said it. Daniel believes he legally owns everything now. Those words didn't sound like speculation. They sounded like something Daniel had already explained to her. Which meant somewhere in this carefully built structure of accounts, guardianship documents, and investment vehicles, Daniel had constructed a legal argument, and that was dangerous. Not because it was necessarily correct, but because a confident lie backed by paperwork can take years to untangle. That evening, Lena returned with my physical therapy chart. "You look like you're solving a puzzle," she said. "I am." She sat down beside the bed. "Good puzzle or bad puzzle?" "That depends," I said, "on how creative my son has been." I told her everything Catherine had just said. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, Lena folded her arms thoughtfully. "If Daniel believes the money is legally his," she said slowly, "then he must think the guardianship gave him full financial authority. That would be the obvious assumption. But authority to manage money isn't the same as authority to own it." "Exactly." Which meant Daniel was either bluffing or he had done something much more complicated. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Jonas Hallberg. This time it contained only an address, a private office building in central Stockholm, and a time. "Tomorrow morning." I showed the message to Lena. "You're meeting him?" she asked. "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." She frowned slightly. "That man helped your son move millions of dollars." "Yes." "And now he wants a private meeting without your son knowing." "Yes." "That sounds risky." I smiled faintly. Not for me. Because men like Jonas Hallberg did not schedule secret meetings unless they were already worried. And worried people are very useful. The next morning, Clara arrived early with a coat and scarf. "You're really leaving the facility?" she asked.
It's a gremlin.
"For a few hours. Mom will lose her mind if she finds out.
Lights on again.
That's why she won't." We moved carefully through the lobby, Lena covering for us by telling the front desk I had a scheduled neurological follow-up appointment. Technically, not a lie. Just incomplete. The winter air outside hit my lungs like cold glass. For a moment, I simply stood there on the sidewalk, breathing. 14 months inside hospital rooms had a way of making the world feel unreal. Cars moved past. People hurried down the street. Life had continued perfectly fine while mine was paused. Clara helped me into a taxi. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "No." "Not even a little?" I considered the question. Then I said honestly, "I'm curious." 20 minutes later, we arrived at the address Hallberg had sent. A quiet office building near the harbor. Glass doors. Polished stone floors. The kind of place where money moved silently through invisible channels. Hallberg was waiting in a private conference room on the third floor. When I entered, he stood immediately. Tall, precise, gray suit. Exactly the kind of man who understood how fortunes were built and hidden. "Mrs. Ellison," he said. "Mr. Hallberg." We sat across from each other. Clara waited outside in the reception area. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Hallberg opened a leather folder and slid a document across the table. "You should see this," he said. I looked down. At first glance, it appeared to be a standard investment structure. A holding company, a venture fund position, share allocations. But then I saw the name of the holding company. Ellison Recovery Holdings, AB. My eyes lifted slowly to Hallberg. "My son named a company after me." "Yes." "And he controls it?" Hallberg hesitated. "Technically, no." My pulse slowed. "What do you mean?" He tapped the signature section of the document. I followed his finger. There were 2 authorized signatories listed for the company. Daniel Ellison and Margaret Ellison. My signature was printed beneath the line, but I had never seen this document before. Never signed it. Never approved it. I looked up again. "That signature is forged." Hallberg nodded quietly. "Yes." The room fell silent. Because forgery involving tens of millions of dollars was not just unethical, it was criminal. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Halberg
kind of
leaned back
like,
slightly.
predates
Because when the
theft,
trial results were announced
you know,
yesterday,
fix
the
it,
value of the shares increased
don't
dramatically.
probably fix
Yes.
it.
And when the
Kind of a
value
deal.
increased, he paused.
I mean,
The legal exposure increased as well. Of
so
course.
boy,
$42 million attracts
but I
attention.
have,
Lawyers,
I have,
auditors, regulators.
let's see, I have
And when they began
properties
asking
out of
questions,
it.
someone like Halberg
Ah,
would need to protect himself.
hey, wait a minute.
So you're telling me, I said calmly, that my son
Okay,
used a forged signature to create a company in
okay.
my name and invest my money?
So,
Yes.
wrote it
And
down.
that company now holds
Write down.
approximately $42 million?
Down.
Yes.
Uh,
I folded my hands slowly on the table. For the first time since this entire nightmare began, the path forward looked perfectly clear,
32.
because this was no longer a family disagreement. This was a crime.
Really?
I looked at Halberg. Mr. Halberg. Yes? Does my son know you're showing me this?
Oh no.
No. Good. I slid the document back toward
That
him,
was for the top.
because I'd like to give Daniel a little more
Okay.
time to feel
So
comfortable.
we want 15.
Halberg studied me carefully. Comfortable?
15
Yes.
inches.
The faintest smile appeared at
So
the
which
corner of my
one?
mouth. People reveal their true intentions right before they believe they've won. And something told me. Daniel
We're
Ellison
gonna win
believed
it.
he had already won everything. The taxi ride
I
back to the
mean,
rehabilitation center felt longer than the one that brought me to
and then I
Halberg's
feel like,
office.
okay, well, just to
Not
get
because
out
of
of it, we'll
traffic,
just like,
because
make
now I knew
this so we
exactly
can
what
go
Daniel had
upside
done.
down. Okay,
Forgery.
here we go.
$42 million sitting inside a company with my name on it. And my signature. A signature I had never written. Clara kept glancing at me from the other side of the seat. You're very quiet, she said. I'm thinking. About Uncle Daniel? Yes. She hesitated.
How bad is that?
Are you going to call the police? I looked out the window as the city slid past us. Gray buildings, thin winter sunlight, people
Hello,
walking their
good
dogs
morning,
along the
witness.
harbor.
Hello, good
No,
morning,
I
dear
said.
witness.
Not yet. Why not?
Ooh,
Because
it
Daniel hadn't
is
finished making
over
mistakes.
outside. We're
And
gonna
when
win
someone forges a
it.
signature
Right
worth
here,
$42
smart
million,
dollars here.
you let them keep digging. By the time we returned to the facility, the lobby had filled with the quiet afternoon rhythm of visitors and nurses changing
There we
shifts.
go.
Catherine was already waiting.
I have a
She
black
stood near the
screen.
reception
Does
desk with her
anybody
arms
else have
crossed.
black screen?
The moment she saw me walking in with Clara, her eyes narrowed. Where were you? She asked immediately.
Maybe I'll just
Fresh
remove
air,
that.
I said. Her gaze moved from me to Clara. You took her outside? Clara stiffened.
Ah, there it is.
She wanted to leave the building for a while.
We good,
Catherine turned back to me.
sort of.
You shouldn't be wandering around the city right now. I
Alright,
wasn't
it
wandering,
was
she
me.
exhaled sharply. You're pushing yourself too hard.
This is how I open
No,
the
I
kitchen
said calmly.
window. I have
I'm
this
catching up.
really
Something in my
ancient
tone
knife
made her
I got
pause.
at,
We rode the
Lowe's.
elevator
It
upstairs in silence.
will probably
When we
last
reached my
through
room, Catherine closed the door behind
my
us. Then she
archaeologist
turned to
who
face
digs
me.
this thing up.
Daniel told me something else
Does he
today,
agree?
she said.
I don't know if he
Oh?
would agree.
He said you've
Looks
been
like
asking
he
about the
agrees.
investment. Yes. Her eyes
There we
searched my
go.
face.
We'll have
Why?
Storm ASMR
I
here.
sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. Because I'm curious.
I got
Catherine
that
studied me
at
for a long moment.
flea
Then she said
market.
quietly, You're not as confused as Daniel thinks you are. No.
By
A long silence
someone
followed.
who sold antiques.
Finally, she walked to the window.
And so
You should
go
understand
over there
something,
and
she said.
you can tell whatever
Daniel
it
didn't start
was
this alone. That
could
caught my attention.
possibly have
What do you
been a
mean?
really
She
expensive
kept looking out the
antique,
window.
but there was like a
When you
little
had the
nick or a
stroke,
cut
the
or
doctors
there was
told us the
something wrong
damage was
with that.
severe.
Or it
Yes.
was just like not
They said the
the
chances of
year.
you recovering mentally were
And so
extremely
you
low.
could get
I
like
said nothing. So
valuable
Daniel started talking
antique
about protecting the family, she
adjacent.
continued. Protecting how? He said If the business world realized you were incapacitated, people would start circling. Old competitors, investors, lawyers. That part wasn't entirely unreasonable. Power vacuums attract attention. And? I asked. He said the best thing to do was consolidate the money quickly into the investment. Yes, I watched her carefully. Did you agree with that? Catherine hesitated. I agreed that we needed control. Control, the word again. But you didn't know how much he invested, I said. No. How much did you think he used? 500,000. Daniel had lied to everyone, his sister, his wealth manager, probably even the doctors. Catherine turned away from the window. You need to understand something else. What? He's not planning to give the money back. I assumed that. But it's worse than that. How? She took a slow breath. Daniel believes the guardianship gave him permanent authority over your financial decisions. That was an aggressive interpretation of the law. Meaning? I asked. Meaning he thinks he can decide how the 42 million gets used. Ah, so that was the plan. Daniel Ellison had convinced himself that turning my 4 million into 42 had somehow rewritten ownership. He didn't see himself as a thief. He saw himself as a brilliant strategist who had saved the family fortune, which meant one thing. He would eventually try to justify it. People like Daniel always do. And a justification requires conversation. Right on cue, my phone vibrated on the bedside table. Daniel, calling. Catherine looked at the screen, then back at me. Well, she said quietly. Speak of the devil, I answered. Hello, Daniel. His voice sounded strangely calm. Mom, yes? I hear you left the facility today. Briefly. I wish you'd told me. I didn't realize I needed permission. A pause. Then he said, There's something we need to discuss. I agree. Another pause. Are you alone? No, I said. Catherine is here. Good. Let him know that. Daniel exhaled slowly on the other end of the line. Fine, he said. Then I'll say this directly. I waited. The investment worked. I heard. The company is preparing a major acquisition offer next week. Interesting. That meant the valuation might climb even higher. And? I asked. And we need to decide what happens next. We. Such an optimistic word. What do you propose? I asked calmly. There was a long pause. Then Daniel said the sentence he had clearly been rehearsing. I think it's time we discuss transferring the company fully into my control. The room went completely silent. Catherine stared at me. Because now we both understood. Daniel wasn't just planning to keep the money. He was about to ask for permission to steal it permanently. For a few seconds after Daniel said those words, I simply listened to the quiet hum of the room, the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights, the distant sound of a cart rolling down the hallway, and Catherine's breathing beside me, slow, tense, waiting, transferring the company fully into my control. Daniel had said it calmly, like a businessman proposing a merger, not like a son asking his mother to surrender $42 million. Daniel, I said finally. Yes? You want the company? Yes. And you believe it belongs to you? I believe I built it, he replied. Built it. Interesting choice of words. You invested the money, I said. I made the decision, he corrected. There it was, the core of Daniel's logic. In his mind, the moment he placed the bet, the money had become his. Daniel, Catherine said suddenly, stepping closer to the phone. What? You told me the investment was 500,000. A pause. That's not the point. It absolutely is the point. I did what had to be
It's this
done, he
huge
snapped.
jolt.
The calm tone
And
had
so
cracked.
you're certain
Good,
that,
because pressure
it's
reveals
gonna,
truth.
like,
You used Mom's money,
cleanse their,
Catherine said.
uh,
I multiplied Mom's money. You forged her signature, I added quietly. The silence that followed was enormous.
so
Even
that's
Catherine
like
looked shocked. Finally, Daniel
it's
spoke.
the scariest
How do you know
elevator
about
ride,
that?
and so but
I've
then
been
they
doing
have
some reading.
these like
Another pause. Then Daniel laughed
massive
softly, a
marble
dangerous sound.
stairs that they
You
have
spoke to
like
Hallberg?
they had to
Yes.
paste
I thought he might panic. Ah, so
non-slips
Daniel expected that.
text
Interesting.
on there,
He
but
works for me,
so you
Daniel
can kind of
continued.
like
No, I
assume
said
you're not
calmly.
gonna
He
die
works for whoever
a
keeps him out
lot.
of prison. Catherine's eyes
Going under,
widened. Prison?
but
She whispered.
they are a
Daniel
lot,
exhaled sharply.
they're a
This is
comfortable
getting
place, so
dramatic.
it's like going
Forgery involving
downstairs,
tens of millions usually is. You're overreacting. No, I said.
Anyway, so we got our
I'm
main
being
cover
precise.
to do, and so
For a
we're
moment, no
supposed
one
to
spoke.
put,
Then Daniel's
filters
voice changed,
on there,
softer, persuasive,
but I'm
the
also
tone he
gonna
used when
use
negotiating.
glaze,
Mom, listen to me.
'cause
I
the
am.
bear witness was
Yes.
telling me about
I
the
moved the money
glaze
without asking.
yesterday, and
Yes.
the
Yes, I
glaze,
structured the company
so
quickly.
I'll give it a
Yes.
shot.
But look at the result. $42 million.
These are all
I saved the family,
samples
he
we
said.
got.
No, I replied quietly.
Um,
You gambled. And I won. Catherine shook her head slowly. You lied to everyone.
oh yes.
I
Yeah,
protected
they were both
everyone.
at the same
You
time,
stole from Mom. I
as,
multiplied her
this was
fortune.
such
His voice echoed
hometown
through the
from
phone
about,
now, and in that moment, the last illusion
1880
disappeared. Daniel truly believed he was the hero of this
to,
story.
about
You wouldn't have done it, he continued.
1920.
You're too cautious.
There
Cautious
were,
people rarely commit fraud. This isn't fraud.
more
You forged my
fish in the
signature.
river
I
than
created a company
could
to
be
protect your
caught
legacy.
at the time.
There it was again.
And more trees in the
Justification.
forest than
People
could be
can
cut
rationalize almost
at
anything
the
if the
time.
profit is large enough.
I
Daniel,
caught 'em
I
all.
said calmly. Yes?
And
Do you know
so
what the
just
interesting part of this
everything was
situation is?
$2.
What? You
Beaver
think the biggest
pelts
issue here is money. A
and
pause.
all
But it
kinds
isn't.
of
Then what is?
raw materials
Control.
and
Because
just
Daniel believed
everything
control
was
belonged to
like
him now.
Easy Street.
But there was one small detail he
And
had
load 'em
overlooked.
up on
Tell me
the
something,
boats in
I
the
said.
river and
What?
sail 'em
Have you
around
actually
the
checked the ownership
pond.
structure of Ellison Recovery
I don't
Holdings
think
recently?
the canal was
The
open
line
yet.
went quiet. Then Daniel said
But
slowly,
pack 'em on
Of course I have.
pack 'em on the
Carefully?
train back east.
Another pause. Catherine looked at me, confused.
And, that,
What are you
yeah,
talking
it was
about?
still boom
She
town.
whispered. I held up one finger.
Everything kinda
Wait.
dried up around
On the phone,
here
Daniel
after
sounded
World
slightly
War
less
II.
confident now.
This was a
Yes,
big
he
Navy
said.
installation
Why?
for a little
Because when
bit
you forged my
because
signature,
war.
I replied calmly, you
And
accidentally made a small mistake. What mistake? The company requires two
so
active
once the
signatories.
Navy packed
Yes,
down
and both of them
and
must
head
approve
out,
any share transfer.
um,
Yes,
everything
you're
kinda
one of
like
them.
it was
Yes.
a ghost town.
And the other,
So,
I let the sentence
we
hang for a
had
moment,
a
is me.
Victorian in town
The silence on the
and
phone
people
stretched
that
longer this
were
time, because Daniel
kinda
finally
kitty
understood.
corner to us.
$42 million might
Had
sit inside that
nice
company,
houses.
but without my signature,
Then,
he couldn't
you
move a
live
single
in
share.
one and then you rent
Not
out
one.
more. But
Catherine
the
stared
way
at
they
me.
got them
Wait,
was that
she said
they were
slowly.
longtime,
He can't access the money?
they grew up
Not without
together and
me.
everything.
On the phone,
And
Daniel
they
spoke again,
got,
but now the confidence
they
was
were
gone.
here in the
What are you
60s
saying?
when
He asked carefully.
everything was
I'm
just
saying,
like,
I replied, that you built a very impressive fortune.
absolutely
Another pause.
rock bottom
And now,
zero, and
I leaned back slightly against the pillow. You
city
need my permission
used
to touch it.
get, like,
Friends,
few
this is the moment where
dollars, they
everything
had
flips.
so many
Imagine
abandoned
realizing the
houses
person you tried to
that
cut
they
out
just
still
auctioned
holds
them
the key to
off
$40
just,
million.
like, for,
If you were
you
Margaret
know,
right now, would you negotiate
a
with your
song
son or
there.
walk away completely?
And
Tell
just to
me
get
honestly
some
what you'd
property
do.
tax
Daniel
money
didn't hang
so
up
they could,
immediately.
like,
For several seconds, I
pay a
could hear only his
policeman kind of
breathing
thing.
through the phone. Slower now, measured,
I
the way
know
people
that's,
breathe when they're trying to regain control of a
and
conversation that
so,
just slipped through their hands.
there was a house
So
that
that's
was
your
just
plan? He
around
finally
the
said.
corner from
My
us. It
plan?
was also
You sit in a
Victorian,
hospital bed and hold the money
and
hostage?
adorable,
Catherine folded her arms.
It
You
was,
forged her signature,
it was
Daniel.
like,
I
it's
saved the
printed on a
family.
postage
You
stamp that
gambled
went up
$4
like
million
4
without
times.
telling anyone. And now it's $42 million. His voice cracked
Um,
again. It
the
wasn't anger this
foundation
time.
was a
It
little
was
sketchy
desperation.
because, like,
Because Daniel had just
some guy
realized
made
something
it.
terrifying.
Back in the day,
$42
and
million
like,
was sitting
all the
inside a
members
company
was
he
like,
could see but not
oh
touch.
yes, fame.
Daniel, I said calmly, yes.
And
Do you know the
so
most interesting
they
part of this
got this
situation?
Victorian
I'm sure you're
house
about to tell me. You think I'm
for
angry about the money? A
$100.
pause. But I'm
And the
not.
wife quickly puts
That seemed
in
to
that the
confuse him.
husband paid $90 too much.
Then what do you
for it.
want?
And
Clarity.
so I'm thinking, like,
Clarity?
now
Yes.
that
Because money reveals character
was
faster than
and so
almost
they
anything
picked up
else in the
like
world.
5 houses
And
like
Daniel
this.
had revealed
It's like
quite a
the
lot
husband
already.
had a sawmill,
You lied to your
and
sister,
then they
I
still,
continued. You forged my name.
would
You
kind of,
convinced a court I
some
would
of them
never
would like
recover.
have 5
And then you
acres,
built a
and so
company
they,
designed to
put
remove
a
me
few
from my
trees
own
and then
fortune.
saw it up,
That's
and
not what
hey,
happened, he
there's
snapped.
some
It's
dollars,
exactly what happened.
and so it's like,
Catherine sat down slowly
oh
in the chair
my
beside the bed.
God,
Her
to
face
be
had gone
there
pale.
at that time, it
You
was
told the court
probably,
she'd never wake up, she whispered into the
rough
phone.
living,
Daniel didn't answer
because there
immediately.
wasn't a lot of
That
stuff
silence was
around,
answer enough.
okay,
Daniel,
Victorian
she
house
said
for
quietly,
$100.
I did what the doctors told us, he replied defensively.
And I thought,
They said the damage
I
was
was
permanent.
doing good scooping
So
up
that gave you
mine
permission to
because,
erase her?
they later
I was
sold
protecting
that
the
for
future.
like,
Catherine laughed once, a sharp,
$400,000.
bitter
Like,
sound.
yeah.
No, she said. You were protecting
That's the way
yourself.
to go.
On the other end of the phone, Daniel's breathing grew heavier. Fine, he said. Let's stop pretending this is about morality.
The place we were looking at with
Finally,
the old pictures,
honesty.
that was the Maritime
What do you
Museum, I
want?
think.
He asked. I leaned back
But
against the
then
pillow.
also, yeah, the
That depends.
Bovell house,
On what?
um,
On whether you understand what position you're
it
in.
was
Another
the
pause.
guy that built,
You need my signature, I continued.
that started the
Yes.
the
And I need the truth.
bar pilots.
I've already
And
told you the
so,
truth.
ocean-going
No,
vessel
I
comes
said quietly.
in,
You've
and
told me
you
the
have
version that
to,
makes you look clever.
the bar pilots
Silence.
have to get it through
Tell me
the
something, Daniel,
river
I
mouth,
said.
and
What?
then about,
Why did you lie to Catherine about the
downtown,
amount?
they
Across the
swap
room,
to the
Catherine
river
lifted her
pilots.
eyes.
They
Good
go all
question.
the way up the stream.
Daniel hesitated.
But
Then he
the-
said slowly,
as
because
he
if the
correctly
investment
assessed,
failed,
also
I didn't want her to
kind of
panic.
robber baron.
That's not the real reason. Another pause.
You're not,
What do you
can't-
think the reason
can't
is?
cross
He
the
asked.
arms out apart.
Because you
Pilot,
never planned to
but,
share the profit.
the big commercial
The silence on the
company.
line became absolute, and
Talk
Catherine
about a
closed her
corner.
eyes.
Anyway, but,
Daniel, she whispered,
and
you
so
said we were
that's
doing
why
this
he
for the
has
family.
fanciest place
I
in
was.
town.
No, she said quietly.
But,
You were doing it for yourself. Daniel didn't argue this
bar
time.
is-
Instead, he changed direction.
the
Mom,
river mouth
he said.
there is
Yes?
just- they-
The acquisition offer comes next week.
it's one of the
Halberg
training
mentioned that.
places for the Coast
If the deal
Guard,
goes through, the
where
company
you
will be
have
valued at
to,
nearly $60 million.
we have a training
60.
school for all
The number
people
hung
that
in the
are
air
gonna
like
go out
thunder.
in the little surf
And?
rescue
I asked.
boats.
And if you refuse to
if
cooperate, the
your
entire structure
fishing
collapses.
vessel is
Meaning,
about ready
the
to sink
investors
or
will pull
something
out,
like
he
that,
said.
they go out
The company
there
could
and
implode.
dive in the
That would be
water
unfortunate.
and rescue
For you,
everybody.
too. Not really.
And this is where they
Catherine
go to
looked
learn that
confused.
because
What do you mean?
it's
I turned to
crazy.
her. Because the original $4 million was stolen.
But, okay,
Daniel's
okay,
voice
okay,
sharpened.
okay.
Borrowed.
These are the-
Stolen. If the company
Dominant
collapses,
and so
I continued calmly.
we're
I
kind
lose
of
money that was never legally
these are
invested.
some of the
But if the
we
company
have
succeeds,
one bag
I let the
left.
sentence hang.
We got an
Then the
entire
profit becomes evidence.
shopping tote full of
Evidence. Daniel
a
understood
big old
immediately.
box of
Evidence
apples,
of what?
and this is
Catherine
what
asked
they all
quietly.
do. Some of them
Fraud,
were
I said.
red on the
Forgery,
inside,
financial misrepresentation, guardianship abuse.
and there's like all
Every
different
dollar Daniel
kinds.
had multiplied had
We
made the
still have
situation
one
worse for
bag
him
left.
legally. And now he knew
I
it.
don't know what are these.
Mom, he said carefully. Yes? You're not seriously thinking about destroying $60 million just to prove a point.
These
I
are
smiled
wine
faintly.
Oh,
Daniel,
well, these are nice
what?
ones.
You still think this is about the
We'll
money?
have to go get some
Silence.
chocolate.
But it isn't. Then what is it about? Trust. Because once trust disappears inside a
Man,
family,
I'm still kind
no
of
amount of money
like,
can buy it back.
I
On the
feel
phone, Daniel
polluted
spoke again, this time very quietly.
because the,
So what's your offer?
especially the old
Ah,
buildings in
there it
town
was.
where
Not
the
arrogance, not justification.
ventilation is kinda
Negotiation.
like
Finally. I glanced at
sketchy.
Catherine, then at the window where the late afternoon sun had begun
and it's
sinking
just
behind the
like,
buildings. Come see me tomorrow, I said.
next
Here,
weekend, I don't even
at the
know if
facility.
I'm gonna be able to
Daniel
maybe,
hesitated.
probably no.
Why?
'Cause we have
Because, I
early
replied
starts and
calmly,
everything.
I'd like to see your face when we discuss
But
the
oh
future of my
man,
$42 million.
the
Daniel
the
arrived the next
convention
morning at
center is
exactly
less
10. Of course
usually,
he did. My
but
son had
oh
always
man.
believed punctuality gave him control. Through the window, I watched his
They
car
asked
pull into
him
the
to
facility
the
parking lot.
computer and,
Dark green, sleek, unmistakable.
hello, good morning.
The Aston
Oh,
Martin Clara had mentioned.
hey, wait a
It
minute.
gleamed under the
Hey,
pale winter sun like a
where's
trophy.
my,
Clara was sitting
oh,
beside my bed when
thank
he
you
entered
for
the
the
room.
sup.
Catherine stood near the window,
And
arms
here's one,
crossed.
yay.
Daniel closed the door
And
behind him and looked at the three of us.
oh, we didn't
For
put
the
him a
first
little
time
drop
since this
there.
entire
Dang
story
it.
began,
Okay.
he didn't look
This is
confident.
supposed to be
He looked
uh,
tired. You've gathered an
after
audience, he said. I prefer witnesses,
well,
I
okay,
replied.
then now I have
He
to
pulled a
do
chair
my
across from the bed and sat down. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Daniel leaned forward.
Yeah, we gotta
Let's stop
get
pretending this is a moral discussion, he said. Fine. You want control of the company? Yes? You have it?
Alright.
Yes. And you're threatening to destroy it unless I cooperate.
Okay, well, at least
That's
it's
not a
not
threat,
over the
I said
top of
calmly.
the screen.
That's
pretty
mathematics.
close.
He exhaled slowly.
And then thank
Then
you
tell me what
once
you
again.
want. Straight to negotiation.
And,
Good.
let's see.
First, I
Here
said,
we go.
you admit the truth.
And
To who?
so,
To Catherine.
first
Daniel
we
glanced at his
gotta
sister.
make- okay,
Her face was pale
here's
but
our
steady.
ingredients. So
What
these-
truth? He asked. That you use my money without
everyone
permission.
wants to, like,
I
oh,
already said
wanna
that.
live on the land
No,
and
I
make
replied.
the land
You justified
work
it.
for me, and
That's
I
not the
wanna
same thing.
have, you know, just
Silence stretched across
all
the
this
room.
stuff, and then,
Finally, Daniel looked at Catherine.
it takes
Yes,
a lot
he said
to
quietly.
build all
I used Mom's
these
money without
things,
asking.
you know,
And the signature? She
especially
asked.
for this.
His
It's
jaw
like,
tightened.
okay, well, it take
Yes,
hours and
he said
hours
again.
and hours
I signed it.
to
Catherine
slice
closed her
these,
eyes briefly.
and we already
When
did
she
it
opened
in
them
the
again,
Sunday stream, and it
something
took me
inside her
2
expression
hours to
had
slice all
changed.
these, you know, 'cause
The
we had
last
one
thread of
those little
denial had
spiral
snapped.
slicers,
Second, I
and
continued,
still.
you returned the original $4 million.
And then it took,
Daniel
you know,
frowned. That's impossible.
24 hours
Is
to
it?
dry 'em,
The money is inside the company.
and then
Yes. But the shares are worth far more
this
now.
is a whole one of-
Exactly. Which meant selling a small portion of the shares would easily cover the original amount.
and this
Daniel
is a
understood
whole
that
one of
immediately.
these
So
that
you
was,
want
like,
your $4
reduced,
million
and that
back,
took
he said slowly. Yes.
about
And what
4
happens to the
hours
rest?
to reduce
The rest
down
stays
to
inside the
get-
company.
and this
His
is
eyebrows
the
lifted.
star of it.
You're letting me keep it?
Well, this one
I
says
didn't say
there,
that.
but this is,
Catherine leaned forward. Then what are you saying?
apple cider
I looked at both of them.
that
I'm
got,
saying the company remains
reduced
exactly as it
down,
is.
half
Two
by half the
signatories.
volume,
Daniel and
I
Margaret
understand.
Ellison.
So,
Every decision requiring both. Daniel stared at
so
me.
this,
You want to
and
be
this is
partners?
what makes this
Yes.
flavor.
With the person who
Because
forged your
we tried
signature?
just using just
Yes.
regular apple juice
Why?
in these.
Because this wasn't
You know
about revenge. And it certainly
so
wasn't about destroying
gotta try to
$42
use
million.
that.
It was about something far more precise. Because, I said calmly, this way I can watch every move you make.
So yeah, you
Daniel
can
leaned back
get
slowly in his chair.
regular old
You don't trust me.
apple cider
No,
and then
that's not much of a
mix some
partnership.
oil down to that.
It's not meant to
So you
be.
can see the volume
Catherine looked
down
between
there,
us.
so it's concentrated.
You're serious, she said quietly. Yes. Daniel rubbed his forehead. For a moment, he looked very much like the boy who used to sit at my kitchen table dismantling old radios. You'd really do this? He asked. Yes. Watch me forever? No. I shook my head
So we
slightly.
got those
Just long
ingredients,
enough.
but we also need
Long enough for
butter,
what?
'cause
For you
we're
to
gonna
decide
use
what
butter.
kind of man you want to be. The room went quiet. Outside the window, snow had started falling again. Daniel stared at the floor. Then he laughed softly.
Nose is still just
$42
grinding,
million,
breathing in
he
all
said.
that.
And you're turning it into a moral lesson.
So, see, we're
No,
to
I
grind
replied.
these up.
I'm turning it into accountability.
Please don't.
Catherine stood slowly. What about me? She asked. I looked at her.
The pink one's
You knew something was wrong.
so I don't
Yes,
know.
but you didn't ask enough questions. Her shoulders
Grind
sank
these
slightly.
up into,
That's true.
tiny
You'll receive a share of the
particles
profits,
to
I
add
said.
it. This
Daniel
isn't
looked
in
up
the
sharply.
recipe, but
She
we're
will?
driving, so
Yes.
we're gonna add 'em.
How much? 10%. Catherine blinked. That's
And,
generous.
I
No,
find that
I said
adding
quietly.
just
It's a
the-
reminder.
the-
Of what?
since they were
That silence has
from
consequences
the,
too. Daniel
dehydrator
looked
we
between the
have,
two of us.
it's just kind of
So
a
that's the
little bit
deal,
of a
he
snap.
said slowly. You get your $4 million
So
back.
this will grind up
We run the
into
company
balls
together.
of powder,
And Catherine receives
and
10%.
that'll add
Yes.
extra.
He
They're
considered
all
it.
about extra.
Then he asked the only question that mattered.
But
And if I
peanut
refuse?
butter
I met his eyes calmly.
is-
Then tomorrow morning, I walk
forgot
into a
to
police
make the
station.
butter. I have
The
a
room
little
fell
bit of
completely silent.
sugar.
Forgery,
We
guardianship
get the
fraud,
food
financial
processor
misrepresentation,
and
$42 million of evidence.
blender.
Daniel knew
Probably
exactly how that story would end. He leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling.
Oh my God,
For a
it's
long
glass
time, he
of
didn't
this. I'm
speak.
sure I still have.
Finally, he looked back at me.
So
You
this
planned all of
is
this,
like,
he said. No.
you know,
Then what
the
did you plan?
easiest way to make butter.
Very little. Then how did you end up controlling everything?
We
I
need
smiled
butter
faintly.
for-
Because, I said quietly, you forgot one very important thing. What? You assumed the stroke made me weak. Daniel held my gaze, and
So
slowly,
to
he
make
nodded,
this is,
because he finally
milk.
understood. The game had never been about money. It had been about underestimating the wrong person.
This was
Daniel didn't answer immediately that morning.
weeks
After I finished speaking, the room stayed quiet long enough that I could hear the faint ticking of the small wall clock above the door.
run it
10
through
seconds.
the cream
20.
separator,
30.
and so
Clara
now
shifted slightly in the chair by the window, but no one interrupted the silence.
producing a lot
Daniel
right now,
finally leaned
going
forward,
for
elbows
about
resting on his knees.
uh,
When you had the stroke, he said slowly,
have
the
about
doctors told us you were
9
gone.
gallons of milk,
I didn't reply.
and then that reduces down
They said your
to
brain might keep the body
a
alive,
little
he
over
continued,
a half
but the
gallon
person we
of
knew
cream.
wasn't coming back. Catherine looked
And
down at the
usually
floor.
one of these will
Daniel
make
rubbed
a
his hands
pound
together
butter,
like he was trying to warm them.
so we'll see what we
I
get
sat in
here.
that hospital room for 3 days, he said quietly. 3 days watching machines breathe for you. His voice wasn't angry now. It was tired. And then the lawyers started calling. Investors, old partners, people asking who was in charge now. That part I understood. Power attracts attention. Weakness attracts predators. So I made a decision, he said. Yes, I replied.
I've heard
You gambled.
loud noises.
Yes, but not for the reason you think. I watched him carefully.
Mind your
Then why?
headphones. Here we go.
Daniel looked up at me. Because I thought you were gone. The words hung in the room like a cold wind. And if you were gone, he continued, someone had to take control before the vultures arrived. Catherine shook her head slowly. That doesn't explain forging her signature. No, Daniel admitted. It explains the investment. He exhaled. But the forgery, that was fear. The honesty surprised even him. I didn't want the courts freezing everything, he said. I didn't want outside lawyers tearing the estate apart. So you took everything first, Catherine said quietly. Yes. And then you told everyone Mom was finished. I believed she was. I studied his face. Daniel had always been ambitious, but ambition and fear can look very similar when mixed together. So here we are, he said finally. Yes. $42 million sitting in a company neither of us can move without the other. Yes. And a mother who just threatened to send me to prison. I shrugged slightly. You forged my name. He laughed once under his breath. Fair. Another long pause passed between us. Outside the window, the snowfall had thickened, soft white flakes drifting across the gray sky. Daniel looked at Catherine. You're really taking 10%? Catherine hesitated. I didn't ask for it, but you'll take it. She met his gaze. Yes. Daniel nodded slowly. All right. Then he turned back to me. I'll return the $4 million. Good. And we run the company together. Yes. But there's one condition. I raised an eyebrow. Go on. You stop pretending this is just about trust. What do you mean? Daniel leaned back in the chair. You're curious about the company. He wasn't wrong. Biotech fascinated me long before this situation began. And if the acquisition offer next week goes through, he added, the valuation might reach $60 million, possibly higher. And you want to see where that goes, he finished. I smiled slightly. I always liked interesting investments. For the first time that morning, Daniel smiled too. Not a victorious smile, just a tired one. God help anyone who ever underestimates you, he said. Too late, I replied. Catherine let out a long breath and sat down beside the window. Clara looked between all of us like she was watching a storm slowly pass. So, that's it? She asked. No, I said. This is just the beginning. Because $42 million might have started this mess, but what came next would shape the rest of our lives. Daniel stood and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he paused. One more thing, he said. Yes? If that stroke hadn't happened, yes? None of this would exist. I thought about that for a moment. The money, the lies, the betrayal, the strange new company sitting at the center of everything. Then I nodded slowly. You're right. Daniel opened the door. And Mom? Yes. I'm glad you woke up. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he left. The room fell quiet again. Snow continued falling outside the window, covering the parking lot in a thin white layer. Life moving forward, whether we were ready or not. Well, that's the end of Margaret's story. I'll be honest with you. I'm still not sure I completely agree with her decision. Some people would have walked straight to the police after everything Daniel did. But she chose something different. Control instead of revenge. What would you have done in her place? Write it in the comments. And if stories like this keep you thinking, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.